excuse where we are right now. January 2026, no excuse. Again, these books have been in publication. This one right here since December 2023. It's hard for me to believe that this year be 3 years. 3 years. Where does time go? But this stems from what I wrote in the document, still up to this day, the documents.info. January 2021. Those are published and dated. And I have been writing. I have a paper that I wrote when I was doing my master's degree at Colorado State University. I have a paper that I wrote in 2018, and I used it again in 2019 in different variations because I was in business, right? Masters of business. So President Trump put the tariffs in place in 2018, and I have a paper that I wrote at Colorado State University called Unsustainable Sustainability. That's what I titled it. Unsustainable Sustainability. And I wrote in there how even those professors and all professors of business, most business people, business colleges are conservative because they know what it takes to keep a market going. Unless you're doing what? Unless you're doing what the actual Bidens were doing and all the swamp was doing, where it's like a hedge fund, and they take off the top, and they pay themselves first, and then everybody else defends for themselves later. Right? So there's cases of that, no doubt. And we have that, especially in D.C., the swamp that's been drained. But I wrote about how these tariffs would be, they're long-term. They only, and this is, I have this timestamp, which is awesome, but they're only good if you use them long term. And a lot of people have made arguments that, oh, we've used tariffs before, they didn't really work. No, it's because you implemented them and invoked them for a short time period. They're not going to work if you don't have them long term. But a lot of people don't even know something like tariffs is an emergency power. A tariff is an emergency power that is in a national emergency. But anyway, liberals don't live by principles. They have no principles, they have no standards, they have no discipline, they have no structure. They justify everything. And their justification is due to their lifestyles that they want to live. It's not a live and let live. It's what they want. They want you to pay for it, though. They want it to come out of your taxpayer. That's why they're always yelling universal health care. It's because they want to benefit from what you pay for. So liberals have no principles. Now, when I was growing up, so let's talk about Minnesota for a little bit here. Let's get on Minnesota. Let's get heavy into liberalism. You know, when I was growing up, my dad told me, son, if you're at a party, you're drinking, and or just around it, and the cops show up, and you get caught, right? He'd say, if you know you're guilty, don't waste your phone call on me. Call your mama or call your grandma. Don't waste your call on me. If you're not guilty and you can prove to law and myself that you were guilty by just being there, well, you're still going to face punishment. Because I don't want you at a place like that. So he treated it as guilty by association. And that's where we've left. We don't have consequences anymore in the social sector, in the family sector. A lot of families, you let your children railroad you. You let your children teach you. You let your children discipline you. You didn't put no hand on that ass. You didn't put no switch on that ass. You didn't tell them no. And you wanted to pacify them while they cried. You just didn't want them crying. So you did whatever you could to stop them from crying versus accept your responsibility that you had that child and your child just turns out to be a crier and a nagger and you didn't discipline them. And that's where we are today. All of this trash that we're dealing with today are a bunch of undisciplined, spoiled brats that nobody disciplined and nobody put their foot down and said no. That's what we're dealing with. Liberalism is a product of no discipline, no structure. It's also a product, simultaneously tying those in, of Republicans and conservatives who don't say no, who aren't vigilant, who aren't diligent, who aren't, no, you're not going to do that. You're not getting away with that. That doesn't support our foundation. That doesn't support, because you don't even know our foundation. You love our milk and honey too, but you know nothing about the foundation. America is an ideology. It must be fought for every single day. Taken to the fields, like the Revolutionary War did, and even the Civil War, that should be the extremity. But see, even those people got pushed to a point that they said enough is enough. Because they were tired of pansies who just sat there and barked and talked. And even though they didn't have social media, that was still going on. And the real warriors said, we know how to quiet this. Get your ass out here in this field. Come on. Come and take it. But see, people don't live by principles anymore. You don't live by standards. You don't live by principles. Everything is a cookie cutter, Build-A-Bear to fit your little tiny bubble. It's not a true live and let live. There is a way to truly live and let live and have our foundation and have the government small, but still have that, and also a big military, but not start wars. There's a way to do that. But what people are doing right now are still going to tit for tat, and you're still arguing back and forth, bickering with the liberals out there over little things, dumb things that don't matter. Drama and propaganda. And what liberals do is the same thing like a stove. All right, we've all had the stove example in our life. All right, I won't use names, but I know someone right off the bat in my friend base growing up and my family base growing up. You could stand me and this person next to a stove and have someone turn the stove on and say, all right, this is a stove. It's made for cooking things. And these little eyes right here, they get hot. They get ultra hot, super hot, unbearable hot. And you put a pot on them, and you put water on there, and it boils the water. See, I'm the one who will sit there and listen to the person explain, this is a stove, this is what it does, this is its functions, this is how it operates, and this is what it's for. This is its purpose. And I won't touch the stove, because maybe that person explained to details what it is and then said, you don't want to touch these eyes though. Whether they said that on the front or the back, I'm still not going to touch it until they tell me every aspect and detail of that stove. This particular person that I know though was the one who was already touching the eyes of the stove before anything was even spilled. And let's just say the stove just already happened to be turned on by the person explaining. Guess what old boy's doing already? Liberals do this. Liberals wait until something happens and then they want to cry wolf. Then they want to yell, oh, you did this. MAGA, you're responsible for this. Republicans, this is all on you. They want to wait till something happens. They justify due to their lifestyles, though. And liberalism is that. Liberalism is a product of zero principles and zero discipline. It's a product of unappreciation and ungratefulness to the very people who fought and established and fought to provide this life that everybody gets to. You get to say whatever you want in America and pretty much get away with it most of the time, depending on what it is. But people like me are saying that social media needs to disappear. It needs to dissipate. Or it needs to be brought down to a quell, to a level where there are what? If you say certain things on social media, there's a consequence to it. We have to bring that back. Even Republicans is what I'm saying. Even blue check Republicans, conservatives right now are saying whatever they want to say and misleading millions of Americans still with drama and propaganda when there's a blueprint in place that shows exactly what President Trump is working with lawfully in a chronological order. There are no excuses to look the way most people look right now on both sides of the aisle, but especially Republicans, especially conservatives. Liberalism is the product of Republicans pacifying, thinking, oh, it'll just work itself out. It'll just get better. That's what Congress gets paid to do. I've heard that my whole life. And I've been plugged in my whole life. I have been reading, studying, comprehending my whole life for this very moment. That's why I can remember what I remember. That's why I know what I know. And I've heard my whole life from even older generations, oh, that's just what Congress gets paid to do. It'll just work itself out. Did it work itself out? Pacifiers. Pacifiers are not how we sustain in America. You got to kick a little butt every now and then. It's just the way it is. You have to kick a little butt sometimes. And so what liberals will do, they're literally praising criminals. When liberals are out protesting over ICE, immigration, and they're literally praising criminals. This last one, this Renee person, she has a record. Child endangerment, police battery, police assault, has a record. But see, liberals justify that to do what? To pacify what they don't want to accept. They don't want to accept how America actually operates and functions because they don't know how it operates and functions because they didn't read and study either. So they're justifying based on their lifestyles. They literally want the government to fund abortion. They want it to fund sex change. They want all that, but they want you to pay for it. See, they don't want to pay for it. They want the taxes on the rich who, not all rich people are bad people. When you can create wealth and you can create a business and a product and or a service that other people like and love and buy into, there's nothing wrong with that. That's what America's all about, capitalism. You can dream it, build it, and people will come, as the saying is, hey, that's what America's all about. That is our liberty. That's what we pride ourselves in. But these people want to see someone build something. Well, first off, dream it, build it, and it grow. And then the bigger it grows, they want to tax this person more and more and more, but they want to benefit from it. They want that tax money to go to their perversion. And I know a lot of people don't want to talk about it. And I'm not here to preach. It may look like it. But perversion, sins. A lot of people don't want to talk about that. And I'm not here to preach, so I'm not going to preach to you. But these people praise criminals. These liberals, they praising criminals. What about the old, let it go to court? Let's just see all the facts, lay all the facts out first. Dang. Child endangerment, police brutality, police whatever. Why don't you let all the facts get laid out? See, liberals don't do that. That's why you Republicans, a lot of you are yelling that you want to see people hanging, you want to see people executed, but you don't want to see the facts either. You think you know, but you don't know either. There could be someone playing a strategic role in a strategic operation. You know, you forget that strategic operations requires people to look a certain part, to get in, blend in, infiltrate from within, collect all the data, collect all the information. You forget that. That's why it's so important to know that 45-47 is a strategic, special military operation, lawfully being carried out. So that's why you got to hold your horses, pull the reins back a little bit, and realize that some people that you think may be guilty may not be guilty. They may be playing a role. And if you would appreciate, respect and appreciate a strategic operation and a strategic plan, because the plan's there, the blueprint's there. If you would appreciate that yourself and study that first, then you would focus on the plan and focus on the missions, not so much individuals, which is going to get you a lot in trouble. Because some of you, you've already damned certain people to hell, and they may not be needed to be damned to hell. You need to think about, what if that was you? And then you got to think bigger, like an airplane view, which is what I do all the time. Say, think bigger, think. Use your brain and think. What would you do if you were in this situation? If you wanted to drain the swamp, the world swamp, not just U.S., not just D.C., we're going to drain the world swamp. Then that means you got to know a pretty good bit about the world, don't you? You need to know how Iran ties in, how Iraq ties in, how Venezuela ties in, how Cuba ties in, how Ukraine. You probably need to know a little bit about that. And so many, you think you know, and you don't. You may know one little portion. But if you are, let's say you're an expert in this one little portion. Well, then put your one little portion over here and go grab you another little portion and start building the puzzle. There's one thing, though, with liberals that you never see. They justify criminals. They justify for their way of life, but you never hear them talk about the Declaration of Independence. You know why? You know why they never talk about the Declaration of Independence outside the fact they don't know anything about our foundation? You know why they never talk about it? Because that's what gets their asses kicked. It is. Our Declaration of Independence is way more important than the Constitution. Abraham Lincoln quoted that. The Declaration of Independence is the very thing that our founders held up and said, this is going to declare our independence. This is what we're fighting for. That is the key foundation. It specifically says, but when a long train of abuses and usurpations, and then it says, becomes what? Destructive of these ends. It is the right of the people to alter and to abolish whatever government they have at that moment and set it back on its foundation. They wrote this before the Constitution. They already had a prescription in place that says, hey, when we do set up a government after this, when we set it up, whatever that may look like, whatever we have, when it becomes awry, when it is destructive, when it doesn't replicate and support our foundation, it is the right of the people to alter and to abolish, which means you, the patriot, you, the Republican, you, the conservative, are supposed to know what that foundation looks like. And so many don't. And that's where so many people are looking atrocious. And Republicans, conservatives, patriots don't need to look atrocious. There's one thing a liberal does. They all bond together. They all hate the same thing. They're cohesive on their hate. They're just perverted and deranged and everything else because of sin and perversion. They want to justify their lifestyles. But they're all cohesive. They all look the same, sound the same. So you got to handle that. Republicans, Look like a ball of yarn. You look like a bee nest whenever a rock or something hits it. That first initial impact, that's what Republicans look like. Well, you want to cherry pick Israel. Some of you support Israel, some of you hate it. Some of you do this, some of you hate it. Some of you do this, some of you hate it. You look atrocious. You have no foundation. You have no faith because you don't have a foundation. How can you have faith when you don't even have a foundation? They never mention the Declaration of Independence because that's what gets their butts kicked. And that's the very thing Americans are watching right now is a resetting of the Declaration of Independence. We're resetting this nation back on its foundation. And the way you live and let live is to know your foundation, to know what belongs in government, what does not belong in government. What belongs separated, the separations. Now, our founders didn't write that in an actual prescription. That was ideologies by them, a separation of church and state, a separation of this and that. Those were ideologies. They felt it in their personal beliefs that church and state shouldn't be combined, and this and that shouldn't be combined. The other thing is to be content where you are. But you cannot be content where you are when you have no appreciation for a foundation. Because if you don't have a foundation that you stand on, how can you appreciate it? And how can you have faith in it? So that's why the foundation is so important of our nation. So like the liberals, let's just dab back into the sin portion of what liberals do. Liberals get out in the streets and parade around their gay pride and all these other things. Well, if you're born gay, then why do you need to parade around about it? I mean, I was born heterosexual, and I am heterosexual. Why do I need to parade around about it? If I was born that way, why do I need to hey, I'm heterosexual! Woo, I got a flag for it. Why do you need to do that? So see, they're already doing what? They're going by a double standard. They're living a double standard. Because if you're born that way, you don't have to parade around about it. You just are. You would just be. So you don't need a flag to say, hey, this is what I am. And you don't need to shut down the city streets and block people from getting to work who were born the way they were born, and they're just doing what they're supposed to be doing every day. As the Bible prescribes, if you don't work, you don't eat, right? So everybody's doing. You got to shut down the city streets to say, "Hey, we're different than you." No, if you're born that way, then how is it that I don't give a dang what you are, as long as you're not doing what? Cramming it down people's throats and children. Why is it that you got to go to schoolhouses? Why is it that we have to have extracurricular classes and curriculums to teach people about your way of life if you were born that way? So that's a double standard. There's no principle in that. That's why they're not content with their life, because they're already living a double standard. They're already going against God's word. God's word specifically says that he made woman for man. Well, it's real simple. And the word woman comes from what? Wombed man. A woman has a what? You have a different body than we do. You have a womb that you carry a baby around, right? When you get prego. It's real simple. So see, simplicities of life have been what? Altered. America became materialistic. Money, status, power, fame, fortune, materialism. You'll never be content as long as you're focused on materialism. You can't be content. You can have nice things and be content, but when your focus is on the nice things and you're always wanting more, you'll never be content. It's a mindset. It's an ideology. These people are already going against the grain of God, straight out the bat, so they're feeling a level of guilt in their minds. So they do what? They justify it And they keep living this life, and they keep thinking they yell the loudest, that it will justify their perversion, their sin. Woo! I'm preaching, ain't I? But it's the truth. Because if you're born that way, you don't need to shut down the city street to parade around about it. You would just live and let live like we do. Liberals, gays, atheists, you need people like me more than you need yourself. See, people like me, we fight for the border. We fight for the nation as a whole. I don't care what you're doing behind your closed doors, and I'm not going to come to your household and tell you what you can and can't do behind your closed doors. But we have repercussions of certain things that you do behind closed doors. If you are in your household and you're an alcoholic, and you get out in your vehicle, and you drive down the road drunk, and you hit a vehicle, and you hurt or kill somebody, there's a repercussion to that. There's a consequence to that. There's punishment for that. No different than when you take your butt down to a schoolhouse full of children whose parents at their households don't want your crap talk in the school. Say, look, you're gay, be gay at your household. It has no place in a public sector. Same thing with the government. Abortion, sex change, all these things has no place in a federal setting. I don't personally believe it should be in a state setting, but it definitely don't need to be in a federal, because once it becomes up for interpretation, when that interpretation goes against what you want, then you start doing what, liberals? You yell at the people who are interpreting. When you're the one who wanted it in law. You wanted a bill passed, made into a law. When a bill is made into a law becomes what? Up for what? Interpretation. Therefore, you shouldn't want it in law. You shouldn't want it at a federal level for sure. And you really shouldn't want it at a state level, because when the people rise up, the people of principles, the people of standards, the people of faith, when everybody rises up and they don't want that anymore, and they say enough's enough, you're going to look like what? A bunch of spoiled brat children. And that's what everybody's seeing. So kudos to Republicans and conservatives for that. Now you need the what? Application of what President Donald Trump's working with to see the bigger scale of things, where you can tell these people, you have no idea what your governor's been doing. You have no idea. Not just words say, but facts say. Here's what your governor's been doing. Here's what your congresswoman's been doing. Here's what Tim Walz has been doing. Here's what they've been doing. So the American Foundation. Liberals are always yelling democracy. We're not a democracy. Article 4, Section 4 says Republican form of government. Republic. We're not a democracy. Federalist Papers number 10 and number 14. James Madison, the sole, main, only author of the United States Constitution, wrote in Federalist Papers number 10 and number 14. So when they wrote the Constitution, September the 17th, 1787, in between that, from that date to the enacting of it, meaning putting it into operation, putting it into effect, putting it into usage, March the 4th, 1789, in between those dates, he was a author. 3 founders, James Madison, John Jay, and Alexander Hamilton, wrote these things called the Federalist Papers, which were promotion papers for the Constitution. This book is a promotion book of what President Trump is doing. It outlines the 45-47 in a chronological order of all the laws and orders that President Trump is using to set our nation back on the Declaration. The Federalist Papers were promotion papers of why the people should adopt the Constitution. But they didn't stray from our foundation, because they fought a war, they declared independence, and then wrote a Constitution. And then went promoted while the Constitution would be great, and then it was enacted later. Federalist Papers number 10 and number 14, the sole author, James Madison, who was also the sole author of the Bill of Rights. All these libtards out there, this is my First Amendment. The sole author, James Madison, of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, in Federalist Papers number 10 and 14, specifically said that pure democracies are dangerous. So how can you support the Constitution, and how can you yell you have a First Amendment when the sole author of those wrote in Federalist Papers 10 and 14 specific how democracies are dangerous? See, that's a double standard. Liberals yelling, oh, obey the law, which is the highest law of the land, is the Constitution. Obey the law. We are a democracy. No, we're not. The Constitution says we're not. Federalist Paper says we're not. We're not a democracy. That's a double standard, and it's also not a principle. See, they don't live by principles. They want what they want, and they want you to pay for it. They want to justify things in the aftermath. They don't want to fight for it. They just want to yell, kick, cry, fuss, cuss, scream, bicker, and all these other things. And you let them. And you have the power to say, shut the you-know-what up. And if you don't shut the you-know-what up, I'm going to make you shut the you-know-what up. See, we let people bark. When I was in school, you knew who the guys were that didn't take no crap. You knew better that if you said something, hey, that dude will knock your head off. We have no more. We have no more consequences for letting people bark. So that's why you got to kick a little. You got to take what is ours back and say, look, this is what we're doing. If you don't like it, you can get the you-know-what out. And if you keep barking and if you keep talking, I'm going to make you get the you-know-what out. Liberals have zero principles. They have zero standards. They have zero discipline. They have zero structure whatsoever. But you Republicans, you conservatives, you patriots, you allow them the participation trophies. You allow the DEI. You allow the wokeness. You allowed them to do it. You gave them an inch. They took 10 million miles and they skull dragged your IQ the whole way. The way that we quell this, first off, and then solve it, is to teach prevention. Well, the way you teach prevention is to teach things like our foundation. Here's our foundation. Here's the foundation of the United States of America. No, we don't have to walk around wearing wigs like they did in the 1700s, but here's what it looks like. Here's what we stand on, here's what we are, here's who we are, and what we're always going to be. And if you don't like it, then you have to either build up in numbers and outvote us, or take to the what? Take to the fields. We're going to draw a line in the sand. You get to pick your side of the line. If you want to come take it, you have that option. But see, we allow liberals to bark in a nation full of what? Cowboys, good old boys, veterans with the most ammunition in the world. We allow them to talk. And all you got to do is get that big stick in your hand and wave it around and say, you're not going to talk much longer, because you're not going to do anything about it anyway. The other thing is action, which knowing your foundation and then the action. That is knowing your foundation and then the action. The action would be, again, you start with the small, and if we have to end up here, we will. But right here, you don't allow them to talk, bark, bicker, yell, fuss. But the way you do that is you got to hit them with the facts. And I know the word facts and truth and those things have been watered down through the years, but they're not. You gotta trust your command. You got to trust your commanders. That's one thing the military does teach. Now, there's been bad leaders, no doubt, everywhere. But that's why everybody has to know what? The foundation. What are we fighting for? What are we fighting for? Oh, we have a foundation. Oh, we have laws. Ooh, we have orders. Ooh, we have rules. That's what we're fighting for. And when those support humanity and those support foundation and those support Constitution, then that's what's good for everyone, not just individual ideas. And that's what everybody else is doing right now. Everybody else out there, especially liberals, they're fighting for their individual little bubbles. There's a way to live and let live, and everybody have a free life. Do what you want to do at home. Be what you want to be at home. You can still be that at work, but you go to work, you don't say anything. If your friends at work are okay with having communication and talking about it, great. But when you start wanting policy change, when you start wanting rule change, when you start wanting law change, and when you start wanting the federal law change, that's when it becomes a problem. And that's not going to happen. That's how you solve this. That's the action you've got to take out there. The only way you can take action, though, is to know the laws, to know the orders, to know the rules. And if you don't know those and what they support, which is your foundation, the Declaration, the Constitution, the ideologies of our founders, you're still going to be lost. Because you can't have the rules and the laws and the orders without the foundation either. You got to know all of it and how they conjoin, how they integrate, and how they go together. And then laws and orders require enforcement of those. So like what you're watching right now is the enforcement of the laws as prescribed on paper. But you've never seen the laws enforced the way the laws should be. That's why the liberals are looking atrocious. So I wrote down some notes here. So like principle number 1, I'm just going to do 2 principles, which are big principles of what liberals look like. So liberals are attacking law enforcement for enforcing the law when they yell, "Don't obey an unlawful order." So listen to that. So I've been talking about this for a while now. I've been talking about this for 2 or 3 years. Laws. If it's in law, then it's already lawful. Now, you may not have voted on it, and you may not have voted for it, which is what we are, we the people. That's what we the people means, is we're the government. So it may be a bad law, but guess who didn't vote for it? You didn't. So how did it get in law? There's your hijacking of the judicial branch. The judicial branch got out of line. We all know this. The patriots know this. 1870s to 1913, everything took a big flip with the Organic Acts of 1871 and 1878. The Federal Reserve was established. That's when all the monetary started shifting. The judges became more on their bar, their British accreditation registry, the British. Everything went back to looking like the crown. Everything went to a flippage. The very nation we fought our independence from, everything flipped back. And it was subtle. It was subtle because the people of the 1870s, 80s, and 90s were living their lives, farming, blacksmiths, and in a different way of life, while D.C. was up here doing their own thing and growing and growing and growing. And in 1913, income tax. When you look at all of what was going on, World War I, shortly after, the Great Depression, World War II, the New Deal, Roosevelt, all these new deals, your grandparents, my grandparents, maybe your parents, depending on your age, started putting their money in these new deals. They started investing in all these things. But look who was running it up here. They knew what they were doing. They knew they were conniving. They knew they were deceiving the people. They knew that. But people, Americans, our families, probably not my family though. My family is always, that's why I am the way I am. That's why I know what I know. I'm a son of the Confederacy and a son of the Revolution. Just about every male in my family has served in the military. That's saying a lot right there. Now, I don't mean they know everything, but every one of them that I've been around knows a great deal about something. Laws, orders, foundation. Why they fight, why they fought. Liberals don't know that. They don't care to know that. They have no appreciation for it. They claim they respect the military, but their actions prove otherwise. So attacking law enforcement and then turn around and yelling, don't obey an unlawful order. Well, because you didn't vote for it, it's a law. And what did Abraham Lincoln, I've been quoting Abraham Lincoln quite often, what did Abraham Lincoln say about a bad law? A bad law must be strictly enforced, double, where the people can see it and they can do what to it? They can dissent, meaning express your dissension, meaning you don't like it. But he was also alluding to back then what was already taking place. Because think about it, 1861, 1865, 3 years later, the birthright citizenship that President Trump's been talking about heavily, repealing. It was already rolling towards what? The hijacking of the United States of America. Abraham Lincoln sitting there saying that a bad law should be strictly enforced. How did it get in law if the people didn't vote for it? See, that's what we the people actually means. We the people are actual government. Representatives represent us. They are to do what we want, what we collectively want. That's why town halls are to be effective, but they only can be effective when you know what? Your foundation. Your appreciation of the foundation. Not your individual desires and wants, but what is good for everybody. And see, the liberals, if they had it their way, it would suffice their lifestyle, but not yours. So see, they don't think for everybody else. And when Americans would get back to thinking about your neighbor before yourself, and then that neighbor before yourself, and that neighbor thinks about their neighbor before themselves, when everybody makes it reciprocal that way, then everybody will start thinking a lot more for humanity, not individuals. And then people will talk more, communicate more. Because when you make it about your neighbor before yourself, and that neighbor before yourself, and they do the same thing, then that creates the environment to have conversations. To say, well, what do you think? And then you don't say anything, and then that person, well, what do you think? And then they'll go, well, what do you think? And then they'll go, well, what do you think? And that's how we have talks. That's how we get to where we're going. But all this bickering, fussing, whining, complaining, griping, kicking, cussing, those are products of people who are not getting what they want for themselves. Not what you may need and what you may need. That's how we got here. So a bad law, how did it become a law? If you didn't vote it in. You didn't have any say-so. So all these people out there, these liberals, right now with what happened in Minnesota, they don't want to talk about prevention. They don't want to talk about how did we get here first. Law enforcement. It's called enforcement for a reason. They're enforcing the laws. So liberals want to blame the law enforcement. They want to blame the president for enforcing the law versus flipping it around and going, wait, what are we enforcing the law for? They don't want to look and see, well, maybe these people have criminal records like old Renee had. Well, it's a criminal record. A criminal record is a criminal record. It doesn't matter that she hadn't murdered anybody. It doesn't matter that there wasn't anything on there like that. Same thing with the Kilmar Abrego, or Abrego Kilmar, the long name. They wanted to paint this guy to be a father. Oh, he's a father, and he's just trying to go home to his wife and children. And dude's got, he's in a gang. Well, he doesn't have anything on his record, though. Doesn't matter. Why are you in a gang that's known for killing people? Why do you even want to be in a gang if you don't have intentions of that? See, they don't want to look at the foundation. They don't want to look at right here. Why is he in a gang then? If he's a family man and he's a father and he's just going on this wife, why is he in a gang? I mean, a lot of you are family men and family women. Are you in a gang? No? Okay. So why is this dude in a gang that's known for murder? That's linked to murder. And his specific gang was linked to murder and trafficking. What's he doing in a gang if he's a family man just trying to go home to his wife and kids and raise his family? See how stupid liberals are? See what you allow? You allow it, though. You allow them to talk. You allow them to bark. You allow that. Some of them need to be punched in the face. Just plain and simple. Some of them just need to be ball that fist up and put one right between their eyes or right there. Hit that nose and that lip right there, and they'll cry. They'll cry all right when that most sensitive part of your body gets hit. Some of them need to be punched in the face. They need consequences of what they're saying. So they yell, don't obey an unlawful order. Well, you probably need to know what a lawful order is and what the law is before you yell that. Because if the law supports the Constitution, then that's what it's supposed to do. That's exactly what it's supposed to do. That is what the Constitution is for. It's the highest law in the land, but it's also a prescription of what Congress is supposed to do, representing whom? We the people. That's why using the Constitution is the worst thing a Republican or a conservative or a liberal or a Democrat can do. Because the Constitution is a result and a product of the war and a product of the Declaration of Independence. It is a prescription of what Congress is supposed to do, what the president's supposed to do, what the vice president's supposed to do, what the judicial branch is supposed to do. Article 1, Article 2, Article 3. Article 1, legislative branch. Article 2, executive branch. Article 3, judicial branch. Pretty simple. So the Constitution is not what you want to be holding up as your, this is what you... No, it's the Declaration of Independence. That's how we're taking back America. It was going to be bumpy. It's going to look like this. That's to be expected because the law has not been enforced all these years as prescribed by the law. So principle number one, when liberals are out there yelling, don't obey an unlawful order. So they're, in a sense, turned around saying, obey lawful orders. But they turn around and want to attack law enforcement for enforcing a lawful order. That's a contradiction. So why are you mad at law enforcement for enforcing the law? See, they don't want to do what? They don't want to look at the actual facts of why is someone in a roadway, the stove, here's the stove again, don't touch the hot stove, the stove is hot. You get out in a road, in a street, in a vehicle, and you try to run over law enforcement. It doesn't matter if she was doing 5 miles per hour or 55 miles. Doesn't matter. She was in a vehicle, using it as a weapon. People yelling, drive over her, baby, drive, baby, drive. Don't listen to law enforcement. Say, hey, stop. Stop what you're doing. We have a law to be here. We're operating under lawful jurisdiction. Here's our jurisdiction. Here's our law. We're here lawfully. If you don't like the law, you probably should go down to your town halls and start reading what the law says. All these law enforcement officers are doing is enforcing the law. The whole title of their job, law enforcement. So see, these liberals are products, though, of no discipline, no structure, no principles by whom? Republicans, conservatives who let them get out there and kick like little toddlers who got the toy taken away from them. We can prevent that if Republicans, conservatives will start knowing what you're supposed to know and applying what? Action to that. Republicans, conservatives, when you see morons out on the street protesting, you should go out there too. And if they stand in the way of law enforcement, you grab them by the nape of the neck or the hair, or whatever they got, say, you're getting your ass out of the way, and you yank them out of the way. Because they ain't going to fight back. They're not going to do anything to you. When we start taking action. Principle number 2. This is my personal favorite. This is so funny, actually. So, old Renee, one, had a criminal record. But 2, you know how liberals are always with school shootings? See, they want to use a sensitive subject, children, right? Gaslighting, manipulation. They want to use the child to fit their perversion, to fit their double standards, to fit their perversions, to fit all that. They want to use a child in this prescription. So when there's a school shooting, they blame the what? They blame the gun. Well, we got to ban guns. We got to take guns away. It's the gun. It's the gun. It's the gun. How many liberals are yelling ban guns right now? It was a gun that shot their village person. You know how the liberals say it takes a village? I'm pretty sure liberals, you probably want to change your motto there, because you're -1 in your village today for your villager being in a vehicle. Well, guess what took her out? A gun, a bullet. Why aren't you yelling ban guns? I mean, here's the principle. If you're a liberal, you should be yelling ban guns, because if law enforcement didn't have a gun and a bullet, then you would have just had a law enforcement officer who was slightly run over, maybe worse, because we don't know what she would have done had a bullet not taken her out. So you probably should want to stick to your principle of one principle. See what they did here? They created a double standard. They just proved to the world they have no principles again. Because in a school shooting, it's ban the gun. The gun's the problem. But in law enforcement took out one of their village people with a gun and a bullet. But they're saying, get law enforcement out, get ICE out. They ain't saying anything about the gun. But by theory, but also principle, if you took guns away from law enforcement, their initial ban guns theory, then they would still have their village person with a criminal record. That is what a principle looks like, ladies and gentlemen. They don't have principles. They don't have standards. They don't have discipline. They don't have structure. So see, they prove day by day, week by week, month by month, that you let them get there, though. And I say you, whoever you are out there. You know who you are. You know if you're sitting on your keyboard every day, or if you're actually involved in your community or not. Family, friends, friend bases, small groups, town hall, city council, whatever it is you have. You know who you are out there. But you don't want to look like a moron either. You don't want to go to your city halls and your town halls and your city councils and get up there and just yell a bunch of stuff that sounds like drama and propaganda. You want to have your facts. You want to walk in there and say, boom, here's what the law says. Here's the order backing it. Here's the law enforcement operating to the prescription of the law. Why aren't you doing that? Why do you all look this, or whoever it is, if it's an individual or a council or whoever, you want to lay the facts on them and say, this is what our foundation says. This is what our declaration says. This is what our Constitution says. Here's the law. Here's the order. None of you are doing that. See, that's what you want to look like whenever you encounter a liberal or a group of liberals. If you're bold enough out there, every one of you listen, if you're bold enough to take them on, that's what you need to have. You need to have the facts, the principles, the standards. Then have discipline and structure with the way you present it. All right? So what's happening in Minnesota is deeper than just ICE. ICE is a product of what's been running rampant in Minnesota. All the illegals they've been housing because of their state government. The fraud's being exposed in Minnesota. Most patriots know that portion. You know that the fraud's being exposed. All the billions of dollars, right? There's been billions of dollars that's been transported from Minnesota's airports to Somalia. Billions. Not millions and not multi-million. Billions. Ilhan Omar. She's not an American, all right? She has no business being in Congress whatsoever. That's going to allow, though, the opening of showing Obama wasn't either, which is awesome about that. You got to remember Clint Eastwood. You got to remember Clint Eastwood putting the chair up at the Republican National Convention. It was an empty chair, and he was talking about how that empty chair, and he said what about Obama? Down the road, it will show that Obama was the greatest fraud ever perpetrated on the American people. Minnesota, Tim Walz. Let's get on Tim Walz for a moment. Let's talk about something most people don't know or don't understand or comprehend. Tim Walz. I have a video. It's a 2-minute and 26-second long video of clips of him on TV ads, when he was running for office, his ads for that, when he's speaking at veteran centers to veterans and also National Guardsmen, etc. Clips. As a retired Command Sergeant Major, as a retired Command Sergeant Major, as a retired Command Sergeant Major, ladies and gentlemen, when you retire, you have a pay grade, which is your E level, and then you have your rank. Now, they both coincide, but this guy lied, blatantly lied about his retired rank because Command Sergeant Major is way more prestigious than a Master Sergeant. This guy blatantly used the United States military for political gain, lying to people who didn't know anything about ranks, rank structure, retirement. They just hear Command Sergeant Major, and they maybe Googled it, or they may have asked a family member who may have been a veteran, hey, what is a Command Sergeant Major? And then the family member go, oh, that's the highest enlisted outside of being a Sergeant Major of the Army. Yep. They may have never looked up anymore on Tim Walz. There's a huge difference in retiring as a Command Sergeant Major and even a Sergeant Major versus a Master Sergeant. Huge difference. Now, what people don't comprehend is this, and this maybe hadn't been explained to people. For example, when I was serving in the Army, we had a first sergeant who got bumped up for 1 week, not pay grade, not rank, but he was acting as a sergeant major for that week because the sergeant major was elsewhere. So when he was performing the checks on base at midnight and I was on CQ duty, he's like, I'm acting sergeant major for the week. That was it. He didn't bump up in his E level. He didn't go from E8 to E9. He didn't retire as a sergeant major. So let's say he would have retired in the next month or a week. He would retire as a first sergeant. And then he could say, yes, I acted as a sergeant major for 1 week, but he didn't retire as a sergeant major. But also, it wouldn't be on a biography anywhere. It wouldn't be on a resume anywhere. It'd just be conversational piece. But especially the veterans, because most civilians wouldn't even know that talk anyway. It could be a conversational piece that, yeah, I acted as a sergeant major for 1 week, or it could have been a month, it could have been 2 months. It doesn't matter. It could have been a year for that matter. But he wouldn't retire as that. You don't make a political ad. You don't put it on your resume. You don't do any of this. I retired Commander Sergeant Major. That is lying. That is a blatant, bald-faced lie. And it just so happens that Tim Walz did this for what? Political gain. Because the people who did know what a Command Sergeant Major is and was, and for the people who are veterans that maybe didn't go dig it up, look it up, just took him at face value, because Americans are good at that. You want to take people at face value, because that's what America used to be. America used to be that. We used to be where you could take people at face value, because there wasn't social media, there wasn't as materialism like it is now, and money and fame and fortune. There wasn't so much of that. Back then, people took a handshake and face value. Now you got to look it up. A bald-faced lie. Just like people out there who attacked me. Egg's going to be on their face. I've had people attack me. I should be prosecuted for the Stolen Valor Act. Stolen valor is when you claim a medal you don't have. I am retired with the United States Army. I didn't do 20 years, though. There's a way you can retire without doing 20. Through your branch. I retired through the United States Army. But you don't see me lie about my rank. You don't see me lie about anything else. You don't even hear me talk about it. I don't even talk about the military. I don't need military status, and I don't need military rank, military operations, or what. I don't even need my MOA. I don't need any of that. Just outline 45-47. Therefore, I don't talk about it. But I am retired Army. And I'm not retired through the VA. I'm not retired medically. I retired through my branch. I received retiree pay. And just in case the few that are still left, ignorant, low IQ, if you want to take a crap on my grave one day, I do qualify for Arlington because I have 2 different requirements that were qualify me for there. So you'll know where I'm buried. I've not lied like Tim Walz lied, blatantly lied, and has evidence of lying. And to this date, in the Wikipedia bio, whoever writes those, it specifically says, in a paragraph up here, says, highest rank he achieved was Command Sergeant Major. He did not achieve Command Sergeant Major. He may have acted as a Command Sergeant Major, but he didn't achieve that rank. Huge difference. Then in the paragraph below, it specifically says that he retired as a Master Sergeant. If you retire as a Master Sergeant, that is the highest rank that you achieved. Doesn't matter what they acted or got to act as anywhere, anybody. Every veteran that knows the military the way they're supposed to know it lawfully knows this. So they're putting the focus and attention on Tim Walz. Tim Walz in his press conference this week. What's he doing? He's gaslighting and manipulating. All this is scripted. Drain that swamp. Drain that swamp. You yelled it. You all yelled it out there. You wanted this. You're watching the script play out. The focus is now on Minnesota. The focus is now on Tim Walz, the governor, who lied about his rank. Military. That is a stolen valor. That's the Stolen Valor Act. The same way that Mark Kelly's being punished by the Uniform Code of Military Justice, Tim Walz can be punished the same way. Retirees, that's why I'm careful. That's why I say what I say, and I know what I know, because I can be tried under the Uniform Code of Military Justice as a retiree myself. I know exactly what I can and can't say, because I value who I am, and I value my reputation, and I value the life that I've built and created. And I go by the standard to the T, to the principles, to what I talk about in these podcasts. So they're putting the attention on this fraud, a liar and a fraud. And in his press conferences, you got to disregard all the gaslighting and manipulation. That's to be expected. That's what it's supposed to look like, because we're not at the finale yet. He's just a low man on the totem pole. Your bigger pieces are your Obamas, your Joes, your Hillarys, your Bills. Wait. Let it play out. It's getting there. This is exposing now the fraud, the money. Now we're getting to the money. Follow the money. Remember President Trump's quotes? Oh, ye of little faith, oh boy, you love President Trump, but you forget of everything he said. Drain the swamp. Follow the money. Be careful what you wish for. We have it all. We've caught them all. We're getting to the fraud levels now. Governors, congressmen and women. And Tim Walz specifically said the key things you got to listen to. He said, come after me all you want, but leave my people out of it. You're already coming after me. You already got me. He said this in his press conference. He was talking to President Trump. Come after me all you want. You're already doing that, but leave my people alone. Didn't Maduro yell, come after me? Come on, people. If you know what you're supposed to know, you'd be licking your chops at what's being exposed to the normies out there. Because they got the liberals all stirred up. The liberals don't even know in unconventional warfare, things of what happened in the streets of Minnesota, all the numbers align into operation. Your 33rd, your 33s, all right, those align. Numbers matter. But also in unconventional warfare, very things just like this can be used. And see, what we're doing is using all the deep state's tactics against them. Like the body doubles. CIA's been doing this for years. Everything that President Trump, the generals and admirals are doing, we're taking all of the tactics of the deep state and we're using it against them. You know what that leads to? White flags. Tim Walz was partially raising the white flag right there. Come after me all you want. You're already doing that, but leave my people alone. So you got to listen, but you can't listen if you don't know the foundation. You can't listen if you don't know what President Trump's working with. Ilhan Omar, fraudulent. Somalian, sending money back. President Trump says she's the ringleader of the Somalian ring. Sending money back. Sending money back. Billions of dollars. Keith Ellison. Keith Ellison is a Muslim piece of trash. All right? His son was Antifa. One of his sons. Antifa. With a record of it. Hillary Rodham Clinton. If she won presidency in 2016, guess who she wanted to be the head of the DNC? Keith Ellison. He is a liberal Muslim piece of trash. And I've never said this anywhere, and I've been reluctant to do it, but I'm going to say it today. I was in basic training with his other son. And I firmly believe that he was trying to escape his piece of trash family. He is nowhere to be found on social media. Nowhere to be found. I had multiple conversations with him in basic training. Nothing of what he talked about and the way he talked aligned with his piece of trash father and his piece of trash brother. Muslim, radical Muslim. Radical. And I'm talking about like extreme radical. Billions of dollars leaving Minnesota from Minnesota taxpayers. Minnesotans, you got to get plugged in to what's taking place. You got to know what's taking place lawfully. Most Republicans right now know the fraud levels are being exposed, the ones who voted for President Trump. But you got to know all the pieces of the puzzle. Action. You have to get plugged in. But you can't have local action and national impact, all pun intended, if you don't know what the laws and the orders are. I agree with local action means national impact, but you can't have local action by just drama and propaganda. You got to know what our laws and our orders are that support our way of life, of our ideologies, of our foundation. You got to know those first. You can't make these applicable if you don't know those. Tim Kaine, if you watch the latest podcast I did with the Special Operations Commanders and other commanders, and then SEAL Team 6, Jaco, if you watched that most recent, we talked about